Hi, hello, welcome back or welcome to my channel. My name is Sydney and today we are going to be going over all of the books on my physical TBR and we are going to come up with a plan on how we are going to take down my TBR this year. So for starters, I have all of my physical TBR on this book cart. It's actually double-sided on the last two rows. And I have a couple of books on my bookshelf that are also on my physical TBR. They're just not on my immediate TBR. So the first two rows right here are more immediate TBR books that I want to get to soon. And then on the back, those are also books that I still want to get to, but they're not kind of like really on the top of my list. But I think what we're going to do is just start off by going over every single one of these books and then we will go from there. So on the top shelf of my TBR cart, I like to keep my monthly TBR. So some of these books I've already read, like I've already read Iron Flame, Assistant to the Villain. I'm in the middle of reading The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I've already read Keeping 13. I'm also in the middle of reading Wildfire. And then the last two books that I have left on my January TBR are Ricochet by Krista and Becca Ritchie and Flawless by Elsie Silver. I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to get to those because as I'm filming this tomorrow, Onyx Storm comes out. So I'm going to spend most of my time reading that. And then obviously I still need to finish these two books. So we'll see if I get to these, but I'm pretty proud of where we are at this point. But like I said, everything else is on my physical immediate TBR. So let's just get into all of the books that are my physical TBR and we will keep count and then see at the end how many books I have on my TBR. First up, we have the third book in the Maple Hills series. This is Daydream by Hannah Grace. And like I said, I'm in the middle of reading Wildfire right now. So far, I'm really enjoying it. And this is Henry's book. And I absolutely loved Henry from the first book. This is the first book in a Rebel Blue Ranch series. This is Done and Dusted. And I honestly have not read a cowboy romance before. Next up, we have Out on a Limb. And I have heard so many good things about this story. I honestly don't know too much about it. I just saw it kind of getting a lot of hype on Book Talk and Booktube. So I thought, why not pick it up? And when I saw it was on buy one, get one 50% off at Barnes & Noble, I obviously had to pick it up. Next up, we have Runaway Love. This was also on buy one, get one 50% off at Barnes. And these sprayed edges are absolutely gorgeous. And that was honestly like the selling factor of me buying this book. Next up, I have Practice Makes Perfect. And I believe this is part of a interconnected standalone series. I could be wrong, but I am like 90% sure that's right. And again, like I just really liked the cover and like the guy with the tattoos, like, I mean, come on. So again, not much to say about this book, but here's the next book on our TBR. Next up, I have How to End a Love Story. Again, I saw this on Book Talk and Booktube a lot, so that's really the main reason I picked it up, kind of like all of the other books on my TBR. Next up, we have The Love of My Afterlife, and I have been wanting to read this book for a while. I just felt like I should wait until February because it's like Valentine's Day, and obviously that's next month, so I'm gonna probably be picking this up really soon. I did just want to read this like little blurb on the back for you guys. It says, a recently deceased woman meets the one in the afterlife waiting room, scoring a second chance at life and love if she finds him on earth before 10 days are up. So I feel like that sounded like really cool and intriguing. It also sounded like a little bit of like magical realism. And if you know, Ashley Poston does the best magical realism there is out there. And she has a quote on the back of this book and it says complicated, dreamy, and hilarious. So if Ashley Poston like has a quote on it, of course I'm gonna read it. So I'm hoping to get to this book really soon. Next, we have Frederick Bachman's Anxious People. I've heard a bunch of people talking about Frederick Bachman's writing recently, and I feel like I just kind of wanted to pick this book up as my first taste into his writing, just because, I don't know, I feel like I would be able to relate to these characters, and I've heard a lot of people really liked this book by him. Next up, we have my first Kristen Hanna book, and this is Firefly Lane. I've actually already seen the Netflix adaptation of this. Kind of unfortunate. I would have liked to read the book before watching the series, but I didn't. This is also a pretty thick one, but I feel like even though I've already seen the show, I think it's gonna make the reading experience 10 times better because I'm gonna be able to actually picture the scenes and picture the characters in my mind while I'm reading this book. So I'm actually really excited to get to this. Next up, I have been seeing this book everywhere. This is The X-Vows by Jessica Joyce, and oh my gosh, I cannot tell you how many times I've seen people talking about this all over TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, but I am pretty sure these two main characters have to like pretend that they're still like cordial with each other because they're exes, but I'm pretty sure they're like best friends or something, are like getting married, so they have to pretend that they're like cool for the sake of their friends and for the sake of being, you know, able to keep the wedding nice and lighthearted. So estranged exes must stick close together to save their best friend's wedding after a string of disasters in this swoony and steamy second chance romance. Okay, I can say that I do love a second chance romance, so I feel like this will be right up my alley. I'm probably gonna also read this in February just because I feel like February, since it's Valentine's Day, it like means that I need to read all of the romance books. So expect to see this on my February TBR. Next up, we have the third book in the Boys of Tommen series. This is Saving Six, and oh my gosh, if you guys haven't read the first two books, Keeping 13 and Binding 13, I don't know why I said that out of order, but if you guys haven't read those books yet, you absolutely need to pick them up. I was kind of weary about reading the Boys of Tommen series, but I cannot tell you how happy I am that I read this series. It was absolutely amazing. It was like jerking my emotions back and forth. I was happy one second and then I was sad the other, and I wanted to cry for our main character, and then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy for her. So if you guys have been thinking about reading the Boys of Tommen series, please pick it up. And this is, I believe this is Joey's story. Yep, Joey Lynch. So I'm excited to get into that story. Next up, we have Powerless by Lauren Roberts. And oh my gosh, first of all, this is the UK edition just because I wanted it to be the paperback. I don't know why I haven't read this book yet. I have put it on my TBRs so many times and I just can't bring myself to read it. I literally cannot tell you why, because I have seen so many people raving about this book and I know I'm gonna love it and it's going to be amazing. It's a young adult fantasy, and of course that is like right up my alley, and I just haven't brought myself to read it and I don't know why. Next up, we have Phantasma by Kaylee Smith, and I have heard a lot of people saying that this is like the adult version of the Caraval and Once Upon a Broken Heart series, and you know, if you know me, you know that that is like one of my all-time favorite series is these two series right here. Obviously I had to display them, but oh my gosh, if this is just like a little bit of like how Caraval is and it's more of an adult version of Caraval, then you bet I'm going to absolutely fall in love with this series. Next book we have on my TBR is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is my first Leigh Bardugo book, and I honestly cannot tell you anything about this book, but I've heard some of the people I watch on Booktube really like Leigh Bardugo, and it says it's the mesmerizing adult debut from Leigh Bardugo, a tale of power, privilege, dark magic, and murder amongst the Ivy League elite. So I feel like it kind of sounds like it's gonna be dark academia. Next we have Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater, and first of all, this cover is absolutely gorgeous, but I feel like this storyline sounds really intriguing. It's also a very short little book for a fantasy. The back says it's difficult to find a husband in Regency England when you're a young lady with only half a soul. So from what I've heard about this book, this girl, our main character, her soul is literally cut in half. So that's pretty much all I know. Next up is a book that has been on my like mental TBR for a really long time, and I just recently decided to pick it up because I found the special edition of it at Barnes, so I thought, why not? It's the perfect time. This is If We Were Villains, and honestly, I can't really tell you too much about it. I just know that this has been a hyped book for a while on Book Talk. Next, we have One Dark Window, and this is by Rachel Gillig, and I have heard so many people, obviously probably just like all of you, have heard so many people talking about this duet, I believe, and it's literally, it just sounds so good, and it sounds like it would be like almost probably a 5-star read for me, if not a pretty high rating. Next up, I have Throne of the Fallen, and take a minute and just enjoy how pretty this special edition cover is. but I got this at Barnes & Noble for buy one, get one 50% off. So of course, again, I had to pick it up. But I believe you're supposed to read the Kingdom of the Wicked trilogy before you jump into this series. So if any of you know, please let me know, because I've been going back and forth on if I should read that trilogy first and then jump into this or not. I've heard a couple of people say like you don't have to, but other people are like you might be confused if you just jump into this world. Next up, we have The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J Maas, and I am so surprised, just like all of you, that I have not read this yet. The Throne of Glass series is just so daunting to me. I don't know when I'm gonna read this. I started to listen to it on audiobook, and then I read a couple of chapters physically in the book, and I honestly, it wasn't catching my attention the way that I thought it would. And I've heard a couple of people say that it might take like a couple of books into the series until it really like grabs your attention. Next up, we have Belladonna by Adeline Grace, and I have heard so many people talking about this book, but again, I don't honestly know too much about it, but I do know that I want to get into it soon. It says death awaits for no one except her. Okay, I don't know, but Stephanie Garber has said that it is deliciously deadly. That kind of just shot this up on my TBR list even higher, because obviously I love Stephanie Garber, so I might have to pick this up sooner rather than later. This next book has been on my TBR for a very long time, and I don't know why I haven't picked this up. I just feel like it stopped getting hype on Book Talk, Booktube, Bookstagram, whatever, all the bookish places. And this is Dance of Thieves, and I don't know, I just haven't wanted to pick this up. There's just been other books I've wanted to pick up more than this one, but I know that a lot of people really liked this duology, so I don't know why I haven't picked this up. Next up, I have Lightlark by Alex Astor, and this book blew up on TikTok. Everybody was raving about this book, and I've heard it's kind of like Hunger Games. Next up, we have The Atlas 6 by Olive Blake, and I have heard a bunch of people really like Olive Blake's writing, and I've also had this book on my TBR for a really long time. Next, we have From Blood and Ash, and honestly, I can't tell you too much about this book. She is a little bit thick, but I heard people talking about it and I thought it was interesting. It says captivating and action-packed, From Blood and Ash is a sexy, addictive, and unexpected fantasy perfect for fans of Sarah J Maas and Laura Delassa. Not exactly sure how to say her last name, but if it's comparing it to Sarah J Maas, then I think I'm really gonna like this author's writing, but we'll see when I end up getting to this. Next up, we have Quicksilver. This is a thick book, and really the only reason I ended up picking this up was because I saw Destiny Sidwell's book club was reading this not too long ago, and I was going to read it as well, but I ended up just buying the book and never picking it up. I think it's just because of the size, but I've heard a lot of people like it. I've honestly kind of heard some mixed opinions, but it says do not touch the sword, do not turn the key, do not open the gate, and honestly I want to know why I can't do all of those things. So we will see when I get to this book. Okay, I just turned around my TBR cart, so these are the last books on my more immediate TBR, and we have Crossroads by Devaney Perry. This is a special edition. I believe this is from probably Smut, but I honestly don't know too much about this book. I just got it on audiobook, so I'm probably gonna end up listening to this soon so I can check this off of my TBR, but I'm really excited to get into this book. Next up, we have another special edition. This was from my Afterlight subscription, and this is One Last Shot. Again, I don't know too much about it, but the sprayed edges are so pretty, and I've heard a couple of people talk about it and say that they really liked it, so hopefully we'll end up getting to this book soon. We have another special edition from probably Smut, and this is Five Brothers by Penelope Douglas, and this book is like really heavy, and she's pretty thick, and like the words are kind of small, but again, this was from Probably Smut. The back says, they're wild, we had everything, they're poor, we're not, they're swamp, we're saints. So kind of intriguing. I honestly cannot tell you too much about this book. Next book, this is a little bit scary, but I have A Little Life, and I know a lot of people really don't like to recommend this book just because of how like devastating and sad this book is. This is like my first dark romance, and I'm honestly really scared. I don't know if this is the right book to start with when trying to dip my toes into dark romance, but we have Hunting Adeline, and this has been like on my radar for a while, and I ended up just picking it up. Again, this is a thick book, and I believe this is a duology. I think it's just the cat and mouse duology, but again, dark romance, I'm not sure if that's something I'm gonna like, but we'll see, okay? Next up, we have Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark, and I have heard a couple of people say that this is kind of like just a fun, fast, and easy book. Obviously, it's pretty small, but I don't know. I am excited to read this. Oh, there's little pictures in it. Okay, cute. Next up, we have my first book from Lauren Asher, and this is Love Redesigned. I have her Dreamland Billionaire series. It's down here actually, so I might as well just pull that out. Obviously, the fine print is the first book in the Dreamland Billionaire series. So I have 2 books by Lauren Asher. This one, I know a lot of people either love it or they don't really love it that much. So it's kind of like deterred me from oh, if you guys hear any noise, it's my dog. She's like sleeping right next to me and I don't want to wake her up, but she keeps like making noises because I'm pretty sure she's trying to tell me to stop talking. Anyways, I just have seen some people have like mixed opinions on this, so it's kind of like pushed me off from reading this. This has been on my TBR for a really long time, so I honestly don't know when I'm going to get to it, just because I have so many other books that I'd rather read that I think are like going to be better ratings than this, and this is just a billionaire romance. But this is Love Redesigned by Lauren Asher, and I'm pretty sure this is also, Lakefront Billionaire series, so a billionaire romance. Next up, we have Business Casual by B.K. Borenson, and I actually wanted to read this book like earlier on last year, like in the fall time, just because I feel like this cover is kind of giving fall with like the flowers. Next up, I have 2 Elsie Silver books. Actually, technically, I have 3 Elsie Silver books on my TBR. We have Flawless, Wild Love, and Off to the Races. So I know a lot of people really love Elsie Silver's writing. I just cannot tell you why I haven't started any of these books. I think I started Flawless and then ended up like soft DNFing it just because I wasn't in the mood for it at that time. But I think I'm going to put this on my February TBR. Again, I haven't read any cowboy romances before, so I know that it's like a little bit intriguing to me. It sounds like it would be a fun time, and I know a bunch of people really love the Chestnut Springs series, so I know I want to get into it. It's just a matter of like, I don't know, I feel like it's kind of daunting to me, which is weird because I know so many people like it and I know I would like it. I just haven't been able to like push myself to get to the series. We have The Pairing, and honestly, I don't know too much about this. I think it's like exes end up traveling together for whatever reason, but I really like the sprayed edges, so I picked it up. Again, who knows when I'm going to read this. It's not on my top TBR, so I don't know when I'm going to get to it. Next, we have Bride by Ali Hazelwood, and I know this is like a little bit of a different book for Ali Hazelwood, and I know a lot of people have like really, really mixed opinions on this book just because it was like a wolf and a vampire, and I don't know how I'm going to feel about that. I don't, controversial little bit of a crazy opinion, I'm not in love with Ali Hazelwood, which is pretty crazy. I don't know why. I just like didn't fall in love with the first couple of books that I've read from her. So this has been on my TBR since it came out, and I just don't know when I'm gonna get to it. I feel like it's more of like a Halloween, spooky, fall like vibed book, so I'll probably wait to read it towards the end of the year if I ever get to it. Hopefully I do. I want to be able to read this and I want to like Ali Hazelwood. I don't know how I'm gonna feel about this story. Next up, we have the second book in the Shepherd King series, and this is Two Twisted Crowns. So did I buy One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns without even reading the first in this duology? Yes, but I'm going to read it, so I thought, why not buy it anyways. I also have another book that is a part of a series that I haven't read the first book in, and that is Foxglove, but I saw this at Barnes & Noble, and it's a Barnes & Noble exclusive edition, and I just really liked the pink fuchsia sprayed edges, so I thought, like, why not pick it up, because I didn't know if I was ever going to see the book again, but we'll see. Again, I think these covers are really pretty, so I'm obviously going to read Belladonna, so duh, I had to pick up the second one. Next, we have Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, and this has been on my TBR for a little bit, but it sounds just like a cozy little fantasy. Now, these next 4 books are all books that have been on my TBR for a pretty long time, and I feel like since they've been on my TBR for a really long time, they have just like fallen down and down and down on my list of books that I want to get to. So the first book I have is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, and I know a lot of people end up really liking, I believe it's a trilogy, but I know a lot of people really like Holly Black. I just haven't been able to get myself to pick this up, and we'll see if it ever happens. If not, I'm sorry, it'll probably get donated. Same with this book, King of Wrath by Anna Huang. I know a lot of people like her writing. I just haven't gotten myself to pick this book up. I also believe this is Billionaire Romance. Yeah, Billionaire CEO. Okay, cool. Next up, we have The Deal by Elle Kennedy, and this is like the ugliest cover I have on my bookshelf, on my physical TBR, definitely for sure. But now that the new covers have come out, I want to buy all the new covers because those ones are so cute and this one is not cute, but I haven't even read this book, so I don't even know if I like this series. This is Hockey Romance, and I've liked Hockey Romance from what I've read before. Next up, we have Twisted Love, again by Anna Huang. I know so many people loved this. I'm pretty sure this series is actually being adapted into a TV show, so that kind of makes me want to pick this up again. This has been on my TBR for so long, like the pages are starting to yellow. That's how long it's been on my TBR. Next up, this is on my January TBR. Not sure if I'm going to end up getting to it, but I have Ricochet by Krista and Becca Ritchie. I read the first book in this series, obviously, and I know a lot of people really like this series. Now, these are the last couple of books that I have on my physical TBR. Now, these are not from my cart. They are just from my bookshelf right here, just because they didn't fit on my bookshelf, and also they're not that high up on my TBR. Honestly, they're probably like on the bottom of the bottom. So first up, we have The Perfect Marriage, and I honestly don't know if I'm gonna like this. This is a mystery thriller, and I feel like I would listen to this on audiobook if anything. Next up, we have The Sacrifice, and I was like, not peer pressured, but like one time I was checking out at Barnes & Noble and the lady asked me, like kind of told me a little bit about this, and she was like, oh, do you think you'd be interested in it? I think it was on sale too. And I was like, yeah, like it does sound really like intriguing. It just, I haven't heard much about it. I haven't seen a lot of people read it. Honestly, I don't even know if I've ever seen anybody read it. So that kind of like turned me away from this book, but I feel like I should pick it up. I don't know. We'll see if I ever pick it up. Next up, I have The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I actually started reading this. I got to page 52 in this book and I stopped reading it because I was so bored. I know that a lot of people, I think this is like a lot of people's favorite book from Lucy Foley, but this just wasn't hitting. I obviously got only 52 pages in, but it just wasn't for me at the time, so who knows if I'll ever come back to it. It was just like a softie enough at the time, but honestly, it's been so long since I even started to read this book. I don't know if I even remember anything from this, but we'll see. Next up, I have the first book in the Shatter Me series. It's just Shatter Me, and I'm pretty sure this is a dystopian book, dystopian series, and I think it's YA as well. Again, I picked this up when I first started my book journey, and so I thought I was going to get to this, and I honestly just didn't. Next up, I have The Way I Used to Be, and I also got this book because I heard that it's really sad and it makes people cry, and I just haven't picked it up yet. Last book on my physical TBR is Stephen King's Billy Summers, and I picked this book up because Haley Pham said that she really liked it, and I also want to start reading some of Stephen King's books, some of his like non-horror scary books, and then maybe later on in the year during spooky season I'll pick up a couple of his horror books. But I wanted to read a book by him that wasn't super scary, so I don't know, this sounded really interesting. I know Haley Pham really liked it, so I decided, you know, why not pick it up. Yes, we definitely do have a little bit of a problem. I don't think I'm going to be able to put myself on a book buying ban just because I don't know if I can handle that. I think what I'm going to do is, instead of putting myself on a book buying ban, I'm just going to allow myself to buy either new releases or books that are very, very highly anticipated that I know I'm going to read that month, if not the following month. And then I also am going to allow myself, because I love book shopping, okay? And I want to be able to like build up my book collection. So there's a lot of books that I've listened to on audiobooks and a lot of books that I have read on Kindle, and I don't have the physical copy of them. So I think I'm going to allow myself to buy those books as well, just because buying books makes me happy and I don't want to take away my happiness. So I'm going to let myself do that. But I'm going to start a challenge for myself. I'm going to start a TBR takedown challenge for myself. So obviously we have 55 books on my physical TBR, and I want to be able to bring that down. I would really, really, really love to get through all of these physical TBR books, but you know, maybe that's not as realistic as I want it to be, but it's only a dream. So maybe by the end of the year, we will circle back around and see how many books that I actually read from now to then for my physical TBR. I feel like I've been doing a pretty good job, but I'm really excited to start this TBR takedown challenge. And I think what I'm just gonna do is put a bunch of prompts in my TBR jar that will relate to all of these books on my physical TBR. And we will pull prompts every month or do a fun little game to choose that month's TBR. Hopefully that ends up working out and we can get this TBR down, because this is like really bad. And you know, there's a couple of books that I mentioned that I didn't know if I was ever going to read. So by the end of the year, if I don't read those books, I feel like they shouldn't be on my shelves, because all of the books on my shelves are either books I really enjoyed or books that are just close to my heart because at the time I really enjoyed them. I just feel like they shouldn't be on my shelf if I A, haven't read them, and B, don't think I'm ever going to read them. So I would rather donate them and actually have them go to somebody that will read them. So we're gonna keep track of the books that I have had on my TBR for a really long time. That was all for my video. I have, again, 55 books on my physical TBR. If you guys think any of these books should be on my top list on my TBR, definitely leave comments down below if you've read any of these books and you're like, this is a 5-6 star, you know, god tier book. Definitely let me know, because I want to try to read more highly anticipated books, or more books that I think would be 5 stars, instead of just kind of like reading again to like check off a number and kind of like, you know, get ahead on a reading goal. I want to take reading and be more like, I guess, like meaningful with it, and really try to enjoy the books that I'm reading instead of just reading to read. So definitely let me know in the comments if you guys really liked any of these books and you think that I should read them sooner rather than later. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you like this video or like to see more of me and want to see my TBR takedown challenge, then make sure to stay tuned for those videos in the future. I hope you guys have an amazing day, night, wherever you are, and happy reading.